welcome to Lee County Pod. Thank you for joining us today. Our host is Pete Malignick, and our guest today is Mr. Ray Padilla. Pete, would you go ahead and get us started today?
Thank you, Jack. Welcome to our Lee County podcast, Ray. Pleasure to have you here on this nice sunny spring morning in Hobbs at Undergrounds. Could we begin perhaps by telling us something about yourself? Who are you? Who is Ray Padilla?
Well, okay, just kind of summarize it in easy terms, I guess. Excuse me. I'm of a native New Mexican, if you might want to say that, born and raised here in New Mexico. But I was raised in Roswell, New Mexico, and we moved here to Hobbs in 1968 when they closed Walker Air Force Base. You probably remember that. There were about 14,000 people that left that town. So we ended up in Hobbs, and I ended up graduating from Hobbs High in 1970, which, by the way, we just had our 55th high school reunion here about 3 weeks ago. And it was kind of interesting because we all had to have lanyards showing what our picture was back 55 years ago, because we're looking at each other and saying, oh yeah, you were in this class or that class, So it was kind of interesting, learning about those folks, what they did the past 55 years. And so, I enjoyed that. And now, I did go to NMJC, and I got a certificate there as intensive secretarial data processing. Moved to Roswell, and I ended up working for Boeing for 10 years until they displaced. And then I moved back to Hobbs to work for another data processing company. But it's kind of ironic, though, that when I lived in Roswell for, a combination of 27 years, I never knew about the alien deal that happened there in 1947, growing up there, living there for 10 years as an adult. Not until I lived in Hobbs, then I found out, what's this about this alien conspiracy UFO in Roswell?
And they had that museum.
Yes, now they have it. So now Roswell has turned into, because it was mostly agriculture at that time, and it was the base. Mm-hmm. But then things really kind of went down, so I guess they started getting on board with the alien theme, and so there's a lot of things that's going on there in Roswell for that. But like I said, it's kind of interesting that I never knew about that.
With Boeing, where did you have to go to work for them?
In Roswell, believe it or not, they had a data processing company there. A lot of people didn't know that, but that's just the way they have it. And finally they closed down that center. That's what it was. It was a data center. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up here working for another company named Systematics.
So you kind of got uprooted from Roswell to Hobbs when you were, just really learning to drive and getting that independence, in your upper years of high school, huh?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Was that tough for you moving?
No, not really, because Hobbs is not that far from Roswell.
True.
But, even in high school, I had opportunities to go work for the FBI. And I turned that one down because they wanted a stenographer that could do, bilingual. And I was surprised that I was, even considered for that. But I said, no, I want more schooling. So I went to school. But unfortunately, I met a wonderful woman and we got married. So that kind of went by the wayside. We're going to work for the FBI.
When you were at the junior college, did you study there was an Ernestine Moore there? I don't know. She might not have been there yet when because you were at New Mexico College probably real early on.
Well, I was there, they had just got established in 1965.
Yeah.
So I was there 5 years, like in 1970. I always joke, because my kids have gone there to the JC. I told them that I was taller than the trees at that time. Mm-hmm. Now the trees have outgrown me. So it's kind of a little joke on the side there.
Mm-hmm. So, after working for data centers. What happened after working for the data centers and getting married, and what about that?
Well, it's kind of funny because I worked for one data center, they closed down. Then I wanted to go work for another one, and it was ironic because the person that owned that center said, "Well, why do you want to come and work for us?" I said, "Well, I don't see you closing your doors here in another year and a half." Guess what happened? 2 years later, they closed down. So that's when I decided, hey, I think enough in the data processing now. So I went back to school at the JC, started picking up more business courses, and that's where I ended up being a retail manager for an electronic store.
Okay.
It's closed down now, but for many years, maybe you heard of it, it's called Radio Shack.
Did you by chance know a guy named Henry DeVilliers?
Yes.
See, he was a good friend of mine.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He would come to Radio Shack. We would always talk and just have a heyday of all his adventures too, So
And to this day, he's probably like the most bilingual person I've ever met. He's fluent in Spanish
right.
and English, of course. But his wife being from Colombia, yeah, I miss the both of them, Henry and Maria. But I knew that Henry had a Radio Shack.
Yeah. So like I said, we enjoyed each other's company. So it's been a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of changes at the junior college and a lot of changes in Hobbs and Lee County. Roswell too, probably.
Yeah, somewhat. But I think Hobbs has really outshined the area here in southeastern New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. And also, Ray, you own and manage a Christian radio station. Can you tell us how that happened?
Okay, going back to Radio Shack, I was manager there. I had a part-time employee that worked for a radio station, and this was back around 2000. And he had mentioned that there was windows opening for what they call low-power radio stations that you could apply for. I didn't think much about it, and then my wife and I were traveling to a meeting in El Paso, and we're listening to Christian radio, and she mentioned, I always wanted to have a radio station. I looked at it and said, "Are you serious? Those things are expensive." But you know what? I've heard of this thing about low-power radio stations. So I looked into it and found out everything I had to do, all the paperwork and things to acquire one. And we finally did, because it actually ended up being 3 applicants for that, because they're licenses that you apply for. And at that time there was 3 of them. There was the state, the Catholics, and then ourselves, because we had incorporated as a nonprofit. And it finally came down that it was between the state dropped out, then we ended up with the Catholics finally said, "No, we're not interested." So we were able to go ahead and get the license, and that was in 2005.
You and your wife?
My wife, and then the corporation. We had to apply for that. We had to hire an engineer to go and do all the paperwork, and because it took 5 years.
Wow.
Before even the engineer said, "Look, it took me 15 years to get my first radio station." He said, "Because there's a lot of red tape." I says, "Wow." And I had to pay him, ahead of time. It was none of this, pay as you go. And if things didn't go right.
So the physical space of the station, is it from your home?
Yeah, we'll have a large room in the back.
Okay.
Where we went ahead and fixed it all up. We talked to the city, make sure that was fine, and that was not a problem. Because there had been another radio station, a Spanish one, that had done the same thing. But later on, they built their own building. Of course, we haven't done that. We're still, because that helps keep costs down.
Oh, sure.
Definitely a lot. Because, those radio stations, just electricity can eat you up alive.
Do you have to get like a business license
Yes.
from the city?
You have to get a business license also. We also 501c3, so we have that because, we're a nonprofit organization. If people want to go ahead and donate, they're welcome to donate.
And also, with it being a Christian station, it gives you a chance to live your faith in a way that many people would not, in a venue, I should say, or setting, that other people wouldn't be able to do, unless they went through all that red tape and that. So do you get people that call in, or what's the nature of your programs?
Well, that's interesting what you just mentioned, because when I looked into Christian radio stations, found out that 55% of the listeners are non-Christian. They have not heard of Christianity. So those are actually the people that we're trying to reach, those that don't know about. And so because we're in Hobbs and the Hispanic community and also English, we decided to make it bilingual, so we could be able to go ahead and get the message out there. Now, be honest with you, I did not know zip about radio. All I knew is how to turn it on. That was it. Yeah. It was a learning curve like you wouldn't believe. And if anybody's going to get into this, I'd say first, look what you're doing, because there's classes that you can take in how to do the whole thing, broadcasting, and I didn't. I just jumped in there and I thought I could do it, and it took a while.
It's interesting that your audience is more predominantly non-Christian than Christian.
Yes. And knowing that, I had to figure out a way how to draw them into listening.
Yeah.
Okay? Because most of the time, because I had gone to some, what do you call it, in Fort Worth, they had broadcasting, where all the broadcasters would get together. And I would listen to them, try to find out where, it was a conference. How do you get certain programs for the radio? Who do you contact? Where do you get the music? Because there's kinds of music. So that's where I started, just kind of picking their brain. So I found out that a lot of the listeners, if they were only listening to, say, Southern gospel music, that would turn them off. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So we decided to go a little bit more to a variety type of format as far as music is concerned. So we have about 20-some genres in English and 20 genres in Spanish of music. And a lot of folks just could not believe that there was that many type of different kinds of Christian music.
Wow.
They were just used to listen to the old gospel, and we still have that.
Yeah.
But we got country, we got rock, hip hop, you just name it, big band type. And so the idea is for them to start listening in, and then we have, like at the top of the hour, we have sermons. We have syndicated preachers that preach the word, and that's the idea. Because we're, according to the Bible, saying that become fishers of men. And so we figured, okay, if you're a fisherman, you got to use different baits. So that's the different kind of music. It's the bait to get people hooked in there. Because remember, 55 are not Christians. They're just turning the dial to find something, and then they find something that they like. That type of music, they go, wait a minute, this is kind of different. The words are different.
And you mentioned that the preaching, you get like sermons that are syndicated?
Yes, they're syndicated. We have. That's why I had to find out how do you get them on the air.
Do you ever have like discussions on particular issues?
Definitely, we have different programs that have those issues. We have them on Saturdays. Okay, we also have some news. Also, we have educational, like faith and finance. It's at 9 o'clock every morning, teaching about finances, from the Bible.
What about some of the discussion topics that you would have?
Oh, my word. I mean, from political to whatever, because we have wall builders. They're the ones that handle that. They're out of Texas. It's a syndicated one. Now, I used to do live interviews, but it's been about, let's say, at least 12 years ago that we stopped doing it. The reason why, because it would take average of 3 hours to put something together for a 1 hour program.
Yeah.
Because you're on the line, and of course working with this, and And a lot of times, depending on what the subject was, to get on the air. And then we would also have call-ins. People would call in, and we would have them on the air to express some of their views. And you have to understand, some people get a little crotchety, so we would have to, hit the button like, no, we don't use that kind of language over the air.
Oh, yeah.
Because remember, you get people that are not Christians, and they're going to call up and say, well, I don't believe this and that. So, well, okay, let's hear what you got to say.
I'm trying to think of what the word would be. It's not caustic, although that's not too good either, but maybe obscene or something.
Abrasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Profane.
Profane,
that's it. Yeah,
right.
yeah. We don't need that.
No, we don't need that.
No.
I mean, let's keep this discussion, civil. We want to know what you think and all that.
Sure.
But in terms of, hey, let's keep it G-rated.
Oh, yeah.
God-rated.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And,
Yes.
And I'm sure that a lot of people appreciate it too, given, some of the crudity that is, I'm looking for, you could find so easily on the internet, and even, YouTube or any of that. It's too bad, that kind of thing is, it's all, people get desensitized to it, listen to what you're saying. Yeah. What about decency, yes.
Exactly. And there's a lot of topics that get very touchy. When you're talking about abortion.
Sure.
You're talking about, same-sex marriage. You're talking all these things. People have their opinion. We understand that. We respect their opinion, but we also like to know, hey, this is what the Word says about those topics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's up to them if they want to accept it or not.
Oh, sure, yeah. But not to go into it, with I guess a word combative,
Right.
Thing, but respect for all views. Well, that certainly sounds like a service to the community and to the Christian community here too. But in regard to something else, Ray, similar but different, you have recently done a couple of plays at the local theater. Is that something new for you?
Yes and no. The reason why, because I had done plays in the past, but they were in church. They were church dramas that I had done. And it was just in my bucket list, like, hey, one of these days. And these two that came up just happened to be the kind that I like. It was comedy, was one of them, and the other one was a musical. And so I went ahead and auditioned, and I got parts that were very small parts, but I enjoyed it, being around a bunch of young kids. And I mean, some of those kids were taller than me, but it was fun. And, I'm 74 years old. To try something new, but I mean, it's totally different. Other folks will say, nah, I'm not going to try that. Why not?
Sure, yeah. You never know sometimes if you're going to like something until you try it out. And good to be open-minded about it.
Right, well, it gives you something to do instead of,
Oh, sure.
You can always be a troublemaker, but...
Well, weren't you kind of a troublemaker back in the day?
In what sense?
Just in the regular sense, before you were saved.
Well, yeah, I guess you might say that. I was out there. I'm a musician, okay? Excuse me. I was a drummer. That's my first instrument. And I was out in the world, you might say, for about 16 years, playing in clubs and everything else. And then later on, I got saved. And from there on, I started learning other instruments. So now I'm kind of we say a jack of all trades when it comes to musical instruments, but master of none.
Well, good to know a little of all. Yeah.
Yeah, well, for my own enjoyment. And then once in a while, I'll go ahead and take an instrument like the banjo or the ukulele to church and play it up there.
There was a musician who I was affiliated with the Lee County Museum for a good number of years, and would have concerts there, and we had one artist, Johnny Rodriguez, and I just found out he passed away a couple of days ago. I don't know where he lived. Maybe in Texas.
Yeah, he lived in Texas. I saw that on YouTube because he was one of my favorite artists way back in the 70s. And the reason why, because he was Hispanic, and he was one of the first ones besides Freddie Fender that broke into that
Freddie
genre
Fender.
using bilingual music, Spanish and English.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And Freddie Fender's been gone for a while. I saw somebody just last night on it was of all things a little documentary on Frank Sinatra, and Trini Lopez was in it. And I said, "Oh, Trini Lopez! Of course, I remember him. You know, he was very popular
Yes.
when I was still a teenager, and I didn't know that he and Frank Sinatra were good friends."
Yeah, that was back in the 60s, so that was way back then.
Oh yeah. You mentioned your children. I assume they're grown by
Oh,
now?
yes, they're all grown.
Are they here in Hobbs?
No, they all live in Texas.
Oh, okay. In different parts of Texas? Or?
Bryan College Station, then there's Georgetown, and then the other one, the closest one, is in Denver City.
Huh.
So,
Yeah, one is close by.
yeah. That's the baby. She's 45. Yeah, my oldest is 52, so.
Time flies, as they say.
Boy, does it fly. No.
Yeah. I have a friend, he's a writer named Scott Jones, and he lives in Angel Fire, but he grew up here in Hobbs. You wouldn't know him by chance, would you?
What was his name again?
Scott Jones.
I know Jones, but I don't know if it's Scott.
Yeah, he hasn't lived here in a while, but he went to Hobbs High. I know, and I'm not exactly sure. You know, I'm close to your age. Scott might be closer to your age, Jack.
Probably.
But that's a strange journey to go from Hobbs to Angel Fire.
Did he have a nickname that he go by?
I'm not sure.
Because I remember a Jones, and we used to jam together and play music. So I'm just wondering if that's the Jones. Because he went by, I'm trying to remember what his nickname was now, but he did play, like you said, in that area that you're talking about.
But so your youngest is close by, and the other one's not too far. Did they stay around Hobbs for a while?
Oh no, they wanted to leave Hobbs, and man, they left Hobbs.
Yeah, see, that seems
That's a theme.
probably not uncommon for a lot of people in a lot of towns. You know, where the kids turn 18 and they want to leave, and all. Not everybody, but.
Well, my two sons, the reason why they left Hobbs is because of the opportunities in music. My oldest son wanted to go to recording, so he ended up going to Dallas to a recording school there, how to record and all that. We didn't at that time. We didn't have it in Hobbs. We do have it now at the junior college, because I went there in 2018 and picked some classes on there, and in live recording.
Yeah.
And also, the other one, he moved to Austin. That's how he ended up over there. And it's a tough town, you know what I mean, to break into.
Oh,
So he
sure.
ended up finally getting married and had left music for some time now. But that was the reason why they left, because the opportunities for that wasn't
Sure.
really here in
Yeah.
Hobbs.
Yeah, even though Hobbs has had its ups. Yeah, I moved here in 1990, and people said, "Oh, back in such and such a day when the oil was really thriving, everything was booming here." You know, the years before '90. You know, but I guess you would know about that,
It's up and down.
and Jack knows some too.
Well, I remember back in 1985 when things really went down, and people had bumper stickers on their cars that said, "The last person leaving Hobbs, turn off the lights." It
Wow, '85, huh?
was 1985.
Yeah. Well, thinking of going from the past, what do you see in the future? Do you have some things you want to, short-term things you'd like to accomplish?
Me personally,
Yeah,
live longer, that's for sure.
I can hear that.
In a healthy way too, because folks our age usually we start to slow down for obvious reasons. Your body starts, I hate to use the word deteriorate, but that's what happens. What I
Yeah.
mean, and as long as I can just not seeing my name in the obituary, I'm okay, I guess.
Right, yeah, uh-huh.
But yeah, I still want to go ahead and continue with the radio station as far as we can go on that, and also serving in the church.
Sure.
Because I'm also a licensed pastor through the Baptist Convention, and I serve there at the church. Whenever the pastor needs somebody to take over when he's gone preaching or leading some of the music, I go ahead and help out on that too.
And you and Jack attend the same?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I imagine you've both seen changes within the church too.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? Some of the changes that we have seen, and this is going to be unusual for some folks, is that our building, I'll say the building, okay, because the word church, right? We actually have 4 different churches. We have ours, the English one, and then we have 2 Spanish, one at 1 o'clock and one at 5 o'clock, and then we have a black church on Saturdays at 3 o'clock. So it's actually basically 4 different churches in one building. Now, between all of these churches, there's an average about 8 pastors, okay? And here's the thing about it that people don't believe. None of the pastors get a salary.
Wow.
No one gets a salary. Even our main pastor doesn't get a salary.
Huh.
And people say, how can you do that? The church, because a lot of that stuff has been donated by the folks and the way they give. So we just, say, God's going to provide, and God has provided for a lot of things. And other ones have been struggling. And I said, well, it's because we don't have a salary. Everybody works.
Yeah, and I would think that would help to prevent any corruption.
Exactly.
That can happen not only in churches but in any organizations and non-profit ones, especially where people are getting a salary and people get. Human nature being what it is, people can get greedy or careless. Yeah, that's interesting.
Now that you mentioned about salaries, going back to the radio station, I don't get a salary at all. It's love, that I like doing it. I enjoy doing it. People say, you don't get a salary? No. Anything that comes in, I put it to the expenses of the radio station.
It's kind of like us for this podcast series, and we have an open mic series too, and we're always trying to get people to come to the open mic. And I feel like a crusader for the open mic series, which we had before the podcast, but yeah, we don't get a nickel
Right.
between us for this. And some places, like for example, I lived in Minnesota for 10 years, and as a state they were very supportive of the arts, but I think that not only that, but as a state they're kind of socialist oriented or something. It's but people get it seems a lot easier for people in the arts to get money, theater, music, literature, painting, than it would be here in New Mexico. But in some ways it doesn't seem, why should you, nobody, this is a labor of love that Jack and I are doing. I don't feel, I've got to get compensated for it,
Yeah, same way that I feel. But you mentioned Minnesota. I've been in Minnesota back in 1987. We were bringing our pastor. We had got a new pastor for our church, and I met some wonderful people up there. And they would all come up to me because everybody was blonde, blue-eyed. Here, at that time, I had dark hair, and they would say, "You're not from here, are you?" Like, "Oh no, I'm not from here." But they were very cordial. In fact, at that time, I was in between jobs, and they had these folks that I met at that church. They offered me a job with Anderson Windows. And the thing about Anderson Windows, whatever they make a profit, they give it back to their employees. It's a different company. And the only way you can get a job in there is you don't apply. You have to be referred by somebody. And they were willing to refer me to get a job there. And I said, well, that's great. I said, but there's only one thing about Minnesota. He says, what's that? He says, you get 9 months of winter. I can't stand it. I'm used to New Mexico.
That I can, that's pretty close to the truth, pretty accurate. Because I lived there for 10 years, you get a lot of winter there.
Yeah, one thing that it was my curiosity in Minnesota that the houses were 2 stories high, and I would see some doors up there, and it says, "Well, who gets out to those doors?" It says, "We get snowstorms here that bad up there. We have to use those doors." I said, "Now you're kidding me." He said, "No, this is the truth."
Very often when winter started, and it could start in late November, you wouldn't really see the ground again until mid or late March. If you're lucky, all the way up to April. Yeah, a long time.
Well, I found out why they call it the land of 10,000 lakes. Man, everywhere you look, behind the people's houses, they had ponds, lakes, or whatever, and when they'd freeze over, they'd be skating. I go like, wow, that's really something.
Yeah, they say that for real native Minnesotans, their favorite season is winter. Well, I guess if you adapt or whatever, maybe if that's all you knew.
Yeah, it's 40 degrees up there, and they're wearing shorts. Over here, we've got our jackets
Yeah,
on.
it's just like I used to live in northern Louisiana, not far from Tyler, Texas, and it's a lot more humid there than it is here. And you adapt to this dry climate, and you go to Dallas, and oh my God, I'm wiped out from all the humidity.
Yeah, because of the Trinity River.
Yeah.
There, yeah.
But anything else, Ray, as far as your goals?
My goals, personal goals or
Either one.
well, I don't know. One of the things that I've been looking forward to, I might say, is to go on, when I say on the road, as a musician, as a one-man band, because I play the keyboards, and I have all my equipment, but to actually go out to, let's say, in the surrounding area, we're talking about like, let's say, Eddy County, Chavez, Lee County, Gaines, Yoakum, those counties, to do live music.
Oh, okay.
Like on a Saturday, just get a license fee, whatever it takes for that city to allow you to set up for a couple of hours and go ahead and play music, Spanish and English, and then present the gospel. And, and even have other ones, maybe like, Jack come up there or somebody, hey, I'm going to be over here. You're going to go ahead and preach, a little sermon, 15 minutes or something. And so who knows? And that's just going to be a labor of love.
Sure.
There's no, hey, we're going to get paid for this.
Yeah.
We're going to have to pay for our own gas or whatever,
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of, what I'm looking for. Maybe not this summer, but maybe next summer.
Sure.
Who knows?
Well, it certainly sounds like your life is you're living your Christian life to the fullest. Let's say.
Well, I hope so, because I lost my wife 3 years ago.
Oh.
We only needed about 6 more months to hit 50 years. And things just didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
But,
sure.
We just got to keep going.
Exactly. Jack, do you have anything to say for a conclusion?
Someone who's listening here. They're questioning life. They're questioning why they exist, where they came from, where they're headed to. Someone, if they came up to you and asked, what is life all about, what would you tell them?
What is life all about? They would probably want to know, who am I, like you're asking. And I guess my answer to that would be that I'm a child of the King. And that would get their attention. So what do you mean you're the child of the King? I'm the child of King Jesus. He's the one that died on the cross for me. He shed his blood for my sins. Not only that, he's also helped me in my life. So if you're having any kind of struggles in your life, whether it be financial, health, marriage, whatever it is, you can bring them to him and he can resolve them. It may not just happen overnight, but there's your faith for better. Maybe you have some kind of habits. Could be drugs, pornography, whatever. Those are things that would help you in life for those that don't know, Christ. Now, Having said that, if let's say you met me and forgot me, you haven't lost a thing. But if you come and you meet Jesus and forget him, you've lost everything.
Pete, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ray for coming. You certainly bring something to our podcast, I think, and make us richer. We've had other people from Hobbs and from elsewhere on the podcasts, and we really appreciate your coming on, Ray. And maybe in the near future we can do another one.
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
This has been a very good discussion. I think this concludes our podcast for today. We thank you, Lee County, for listening. Thank you, Ray, for joining us. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.